Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our broadcast here. I'm Edie Summers, and this is my guest, Matt Zinman. And Matt, am I saying your name correctly?
Perfect.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here, Matt. We're going to talk about a well-being reset, but also Matt is an expert in many topics related to well-being and resilience. So Matt, you're an author, you do podcasts, you're a speaker, and I know you do corporate wellness. And could you tell us a little bit about your background? What kind of brought you to this space of well-being, resilience, and I know you talk about happiness and even covering mental health issues like depression, right? Could you tell us a little bit more?
Well, thank you, Edie. It's great to be with you and everyone here joining us. Uh, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, I'm in my just passing beyond my mid 50s now, and a lot of experience led to my wanting to write the book. Everything from some of what you mentioned, and personally having, for example, have had to contend with depression myself since my teens, having been through
Mhm.
some challenges with burnout a couple of times in my career, one related to depression, one more of a perfect storm in life. And a lot of that recovery work in part, and what I've learned in terms of my own self care has really led into some of the techniques that I write about in the book. And that's just one aspect. Uh, we all go through any number of things in our lives. Uh, I saw my mom through a very difficult illness many years back. And, being a caregiver there, I'm also a lifelong ice hockey player and I competed at a very high level, entrepreneur, nonprofit founder. It all kind of adds up. And
Yeah.
so that led to writing Zisms, Insights to Live By, back in 2020, really at the height of the pandemic. Everything closed down the week my book came out. So of
Oh boy.
course, right? Yeah.
Good
Uh,
timing.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's also needed. And so
Yeah.
it definitely had, a different reception as a result of the pandemic too. But the one thing about it that really led to where I am now is that the concepts and the techniques, some of what I've already described in the book, they don't lend themselves to being put into practice by just reading it. Like this is about
Mhm.
skills development. So I have developed over the course of the past few years these extensive courses to put those concepts and techniques into practice, particularly at the heart of which is around resilience and presence, which of all things I
Mhm.
view as the two skills and qualities in life that matter most to our happiness.
So resilience and presence. And so let's dive deeper into those. But first, can you share a little bit? You mentioned your book, Zisms. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And I know that we're even now, if you could let people know where they can find it, and then we can circle back to that, and then we'll dive deeper into maybe resilience and presence. How does
Yeah,
that sound,
yeah,
Matt?
for sure. I'm here for you. So wherever you'd like to go. So the answer, and thanks for saying it up front because I'm so happy to offer the ebook and the audiobook are free. They're on the website. And you can get through that to the main site at mattzinman.com or even directly to the book page at zisms.com. That has a hyphen. So Z,
Mhm.
or if you're outside the US, you might say Z, hyphen ISMS .com. So please, I mean, that's why you write a book, right? You want people to consume it. That's why you do all this work
Right.
to impact people's lives. And I really hope that people at least give it 15 minutes to read or listen, and I think they'll want to keep going. The
Mhm.
audiobook is actually what led me to do the podcast, which is called Insights to Live By, and now I'm over 100 episodes, but I originally
That's
had
awesome.
adapted. I know what that takes. I
Yeah.
adapted each of the chapters into
Okay.
episodes, and then I strung it together to
Okay.
make it very conversational. So it's different than the book.
Oh, very cool. Well, there's
Yeah.
like you and I were chatting about there's we can go so deep on so many of these topics. And yeah, podcasts are great for that, for kind of diving deep into a topic. And so Matt's book is called Zisms. And so Matt, let's start with, I mean, there are a lot of topics I would love to chat with you about.
Sure.
Let's start with presence, because I would guess that without presence, it's hard to be resilient and, then focus on happiness. And so
Yeah.
what is your take on presence?
Well, for one, it's this unknown or unrecognized quality of being that people do not realize, I think, is the single greatest source of unhappiness in life, because we're all in our
Mhm,
heads now.
mhm,
Unfortunately, it's a symptom of adulthood. And remember, if you remember, when we're kids, everything for kids happens in real time. They don't We don't
mhm,
have the forces of distraction that we have to contend with, and we don't realize how much we are in our own heads. So the fact of the matter, in my view, that's really why the reason time seems to fly faster the older we get, because the less we actually experience in the present.
mhm,
So we really have to
mhm,
fight our way back to experiencing present. We have to be very intentional about it, as opposed to it just being this natural state of being as from when we were kids. How do we get out of our own heads is really what this is about. So there's something I speak to called the presence paradigm, Edie, and it really talks about the different life currencies. If you look at it through that lens of time versus energy versus presence. So we're all used to time and it being infinite and constant. And if we look at how we spend our days through the lens of time, it has a lot to do with, well, what did you do? How productive were you in your day? And when we look at it from an energy standpoint, well, that's multivariable, right? That ebbs and flows. Where we have different states of energy that we're in, and if we look at our day, well, how did you feel? Uh, really more about well-being in and around energy.
mhm,
Now,
yeah.
if we look at things through a lens of presence, well, that's absolute. You are either present or you are not present,
Mhm,
and that really takes uh, a set out of being purposeful, being intentional about, it's mindfulness to a large degree, right? Mindfulness at the root of it
mhm,
all is about
yeah.
the state of being intentionally present. But when you look at things through that lens during your day, it's, what did you notice? What did you experience?
Mm,
How
mhm,
enriching was your day?
mhm,
So that's why it's so important, because it's so easy to blink and have days and weeks and months and years go by not
mhm,
realizing how unpresent we
good.
are. So that's really why I speak to presence as being just almost this hidden epidemic of people not realizing how much they're in their own heads, and that it really
Mhm,
does take an approach of developing the skills to be more present in order to experience a more enriched life. And that's really what's at the heart of my work is, what are those skills? How do you develop them? And so forth. So that's really my
So,
summary.
so Matt, so one skill that jumps to my head there, I mean, we were just talking about not being in your head, but one skill that jumps to my mind is being more curious, because kids are more curious. But what is a skill or a few skills that you could give people for being more present that you've learned in the course of your work?
Yeah, sure. Well, one, I think the first part of this, if you look at it from almost a problem solution, as people maybe are tuning in here and thinking, well, I don't realize how unpresent I am. Am I really in my own head? The things that I hear myself saying. And it's important to
Mhm,
go deeper and recognize, what are those forces of distraction? What is it that is taking you out of the present? And to do that, to have the perspective and see, really almost like a problem solution. So the first part of the answer to your question, Edie, is recognizing the problem first. So, we have these different filters that shape our reality, right? One is perception, and I think people
mhm,
totally understand that. We all experience things in our own way, and we think that that's the truth. In fact, it's just the interpretation, and a lot to what you and I speak to in that chapter in my book I call mood health, which really encompasses
mhm, mhm,
the fact that really everyone has to contend with how we are with our moods,
yeah,
and the brain chemistry that we're dealing with. That we all experience
mhm,
the world through that biochemical reality of our our endorphins versus our serotonin versus all the other
Mhm.
kinds of things that I think people recognize. And then the superego, our inner critic
Mhm.
is always distracting us
Mhm.
and shaping our reality as well. And then when we look at it from the forces of distraction, there are three things. We have past baggage. So, to whatever degree we're all in our own heads about our, that could be resentments or regrets or, uh, baggage, right? I think everybody gets that. And, we
Mhm.
rehash. And then we have what I think is even tougher. People don't necessarily recognize that we get caught up in future uncertainties, worry,
Mhm.
anxiety, fear, especially assumptions. And we end up having
Mhm.
these phantom conversations about things that have yet to happen. And so
Mhm.
just recognize these are the things that are starting to happen, and then I think the most challenging thing of all is how we're wired, right? We have a
Mhm.
negativity bias. We have these automatic
Mhm.
negative thoughts, and that inner critic is part of that. And we always have to, be intentional about pushing back on that. So
Mm.
I wanted to
Okay.
kind of lay that out as that's a lot. As I just covered a lot of ground in a couple
A lot
minutes,
to contend with.
but but there's certainly more to that, and I'm staying very top line to
Mhm.
answer your questions. Now let's shift over to the skills. Let's go to the solution and
Okay.
solutions of what I speak to. And I like people to look at these skills as in understanding that what makes them work is that they are definitive. And the first part of that is self kindness.
Mm.
And people think, and a lot of people talk about self kindness and self compassion. And I want you to look at this through a certain lens of it being a skill. And it really starts with the buy in of asking yourself, Edie, is there any reason why you should be anything less than kind to yourself?
Mm. That's a
Because
great question.
it's definitive.
Yeah.
And by that I mean you are either being kind to yourself or you are not being kind to yourself. There's really
Mm.
no in between. It's your inner critic versus your inner coach. All of that uh, is at play. And I think that one of the challenges overall with personal development, self-improvement, the whole category of how people want to enrich their lives around their self-esteem or their self-confidence, or they know they feel a certain way about themselves, maybe that's cruddy, and they want to feel better about themselves, but it's very difficult to get from here to there. And that's really where self-kindness comes in as a barometer,
Mhm.
because you
Mhm.
can always come back to, well, am I being kind to myself, or should I have said no to that
Mhm.
person? Or it's just this ongoing go-to skill that you
Yeah.
should rely on in
Yeah.
that way. So
I like
the
that.
thank you. So the thing about
Yeah.
self-kindness also, while these are not equal parts, is also the antidote to your past baggage. Because it's not kind to yourself to hold on to all that negativity. It's
Mhm.
you're not going to be able to flip a switch here, but it certainly is one of the tools that you can add to working on not being resentful or not holding on to whatever it is that's you're rehashing about. Now,
Mhm.
the other thing that is actually my chapter 1, it's the reason why in large part I wrote the book, and it actually goes back to my mom and some of the challenging times, the most challenging times in my life, and coping through that and depressions, is the concept of earned confidence.
Mhm.
And earned confidence is very different from confidence, because confidence wavers. Earned confidence is really about taking stock, and in a lot of ways, it has more to do with the things that you've overcome, and the fact
Mhm.
that you really
Mhm.
can't deny that you're still standing, right? All of us
Yeah,
have,
absolutely.
right? We've proven to
Yeah.
ourselves that we're fully capable of overcoming whatever it is that's already happened to us.
Yeah. True.
So, right. So, based on
Yeah.
that, we should have full confidence, that earned confidence, that we can cope with whatever it is that has yet to happen to us. So,
Mhm.
that really, again, not apples and oranges, but that has a lot to do with addressing your future uncertainties. You don't need to worry about something. You just wait for it to happen. Just deal with the real, right?
Mhm.
That's now
Mhm.
starting to get in the zone of staying present.
Mhm.
You don't need to make an assumption. You could
Mhm.
just let things unfold, and you got to catch yourself, right? This is where the skill practice comes in. You are going to worry. You do have that negativity bias, but then you have to recognize when what it is that you worried about doesn't come to be, reflect and, what did I do to myself? What did I do to the people that I called and told them how worried I was about something when it was
Mhm.
unnecessary, or I acted on an assumption when I never should have? And those are some of the ways that you can start retraining yourself as well.
Mhm.
And so earned confidence is really at the foundation. And again, it's definitive. And
Mhm.
that's really what differentiates this in the approach of the skill building. So there's a little bit more to this, but I'll take pause before I go on to the, that third mindset reset skill.
Well, and earn confidence. I remember I was doing one of those virtual conferences. I'm sure you've done a bunch of those as well. And some of our audience, Matt, will be in the corporate wellness space. So I would
Sure.
love to touch a little bit on maybe resilience would be a good way to kind of touch upon that area. But earn confidence reminds me of somebody said at this, I think it was a well-being conference, and they said, if you're alive, you're doing okay. And I think we forget that we can be so hard on ourselves. And it to me, I never really thought of not being present as sort of being tied to that, where either we don't believe that we can even be present in a way, right? Because we're so bogged down by either the past or the future. And I love the concepts of just knowing that you've already done, you're still here, so you're doing something right, right? And then and even, even if you do burden someone else with your anxieties, forgive yourself for just whatever you felt and
Right.
just keep going. And I think those are some really great skills. And you said there was one more that you were gonna mention for this topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This really kind of comes back to your automatic negative thoughts, and it's
Mm.
that inner critic super ego versus being proactive and intentional in being your own inner coach. And to do that, you have to
Mhm.
be uh, more self-aware. You have to have an amplified awareness,
Mhm.
and that really flows into mindfulness. And you may notice as while we've been focusing on a broader level around presence,
Yeah.
what presence and resilience have in common for the things that we're talking about is that the skills that we're getting into here are the very same skills that help you become more resilient and help you become more
Mm.
present.
Ah,
Um,
love
so
that.
so because I have, when I came out of the entire body of work of the book and all the courses, and I'm covering so
Yeah.
much ground, and now I'm into what it is you're talking about. I'm doing a lot of webinars for training and development, for well-being, for organizational development, and
Mhm.
so forth.
Yeah.
What do you call this thing? What do you call the presentation? So I'm
Right.
really in and around that, speaking to uncommon mindset techniques that instill
Mhm.
resilience and presence. And then when you step back from that and you say, well, resilience and presence, it's kind of like apples and oranges, right? It almost like which one of these doesn't go like the other, but they are really grouped together. I think that
Mhm.
resilience is really that skill that you need, the same thing as presence, using these techniques that you can develop that are going to have from a personal development standpoint, from the effort that we all can make around the limited bandwidth that we have to work on ourselves. If you had
Mhm.
to pick two things to improve,
Mm.
it would be resilience and presence, because that's what's going to enrich
Right.
your life the most. That's why I focus
Mhm.
on these topics
Yeah.
and why I speak to these techniques. Now, there's one other dimension here. Now, when you go past these these skills, anybody can go to a training course and be one and done, and then never go back and really build the skills. And what's really
Sure.
right, like that's
Darn
everybody for
it.
the most part. What's
Yeah.
different here? What's different? And
Yeah.
I really think it's important to speak to it from we've looked at the challenges and the problems. We've looked at the solutions in and around the mindset skills, the techniques here. You also have to put your head around the benefits.
Okay,
So,
that's good. Like
why
the rewards,
the
right?
rewards? Why
Yeah.
would you do this? Why
Yeah.
why would you put
Right.
your effort into doing these skills? So let me
Yeah.
do a quick exercise activity with you that I do during my
Uh-oh.
presentation. All
Okay.
right. I'm gonna read a list of words, and I'd like you to try and let's talk about what they all have in common.
Okay.
All right. Here they are. Now,
I'm
on my
ready.
presentation, these are naturally in a word cloud on the screen. I'm going to go with adventure, inspiration, romance, fun, gratitude, imagination,
Wow.
playfulness, creativity, kindness, love, progress, humor, surprise, courage, and memories. And that's
Oh
the
my
short
goodness.
list. A lot of different words.
Wow.
Any, should I put you to the quiz here, or you want me to just
You
tell
want
you
me
the
to,
answer?
you want me to,
What are
now
some,
what am I
what
supposed
did
to
all
do?
those words,
What are
those who are watching, listening here, what do all those words have in common? Now, I will just, I won't stump you. I won't stump you. When we're in the presentation, and let's say people are in the chat, they might say they're
Yeah,
all positive. Yeah, that's
yeah,
true. They're all positive.
yeah.
Um, they're they might even get further and say, well, what we're talking about here are some of the greatest joys in life. Right? Yeah,
Mm,
you're creating memories,
mhm.
for example.
Right.
But the thing from the most important vantage point for what it is that we're speaking to today is that you cannot experience any of those unless you are present,
Ooh, that's good, Matt. That's really,
right?
I kudos to you for, that's a great way of pulling it all together.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, like recognize that. Like, okay, you know, what's this guy talking about? Well, let's get down to brass tacks here. Um, you have to be able to you know, like humor. Well, nothing's funny if you're in your own head unless you're telling yourself jokes. That's not what really
Yeah.
happens. But you're not experiencing love. You're not creating memories. You're not using your imagination. You're not experiencing
Mhm.
gratitude or inspiration. Those, you must be present to experience these greatest joys in life. And now
Mm,
that you recognize that, hopefully those kinds of benefits that make life worth, the things that make life worth living most,
yeah.
is enough of an incentive, a benefit to really take a look at this. Now, one other thing I will say, Edie, because we're covering so much ground in so little
That's
time,
okay.
I'm just
That's
skimming the
okay.
surface. There
Yeah.
are a lot of tools on my website besides the book that are free.
Okay.
There's a page on mood health with all kinds of resources called the Depression Defeater is there. There has a whole mood booster technique in around that. Some of the, how do
Nice.
you practice these skills? There's a self-care report card that is on there. It's a tool that's
Awesome.
in the book. There's a perception snapshot that is on there that helps people put things into perspective. Just you know, kick it around. And then for what it is that we're speaking to here, under my speaking tab is one about resilience and presence. There's an article that's about to be published that I have on there that
Awesome.
goes that frames out, you know, these core, you know, these are some of my core concepts. These are really what's
Yeah.
at the foundation.
Yeah.
But there's an article there because you're either watching or listening, you can't take all these notes. It's all in this 900 word article. And then on top of that, on that page, my presentation to the Boston chapter of the Association of Training Development, that webinar, that 1 hour plus webinar is on that
Mhm.
page. And I go into more detail naturally about the cliff notes from that presentation is what I'm really covering
The
here.
Cliff Notes. I
Yeah.
love it. Matt, you have so many things that you're offering people. It's really amazing. And I and thank you for offering everything that you do. And so again, so really quickly, so everyone can go to mattzinman.com. For anyone who's just listening, is it, can you spell that out for people, for Matt, for people that are
Yeah, sure. Matt
not
Zinman. Yeah, I hope I can do that. Um, MATT, is in zebra, INMAN at, well, mattzinman.com.
Matt Zinman?
I was trying to give my email. Like I said I could do it, and then I got confused.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
you
No,
know,
so there's only one N,
there's only
only
one
one
N
N.
in the middle and
Okay.
end.
Matt,
Um,
okay, the middle
you know,
and end. Okay.
Edie, you did mention that there may be some people here who
Yes,
are wellness professionals, and I do want to float
absolutely.
one other offer out there, which is also
Okay.
at no cost, which is if you
Awesome.
are in a corporation or you know, even if you're a coach, you're a decision maker uh, in and around wellness programming, for example.
Mhm. Hmm.
One of the challenges that I have with my courses is that they're experiential, they're activity centric. Sometimes they
Yeah,
involve cohorts. So, like, you
I
can
can
go on
see
my
that.
site and read all about it or watch videos. You're not going to get it because you have to do it to really understand it. So,
Yeah.
I try and overcome that by letting people do my starter course, the mindset reset,
Okay.
at no cost. So for
That's amazing.
companies, so groups of 3 or 4 can go through a trial, which if they buy the course, they'll end up paying for. It's not going to end up being, it's only free if they don't buy it, but
Hmm.
it stands on its own merits. So, if
That's
they
so
don't
great.
like it, then I don't have to refund them based on the guarantee I give on it. Uh, and and that's the point, right? The same as the book, the same as all of the work is you want people to go in and have the benefit of all this heavy lifting that I hope makes people's lives better.
Absolutely. And that's such a great idea, Matt, to frame it that way so that people can do a test drive, but also get an idea of what you offer, which is so much. And there were so many topics we could talk about, but let's chat about resilience.
Sure.
And any way that you want to talk about that, whether it's for an individual who's looking to improve their resilience, and or let's say someone who is looking to improve resilience that might be related to work. I know, again, there are so many
Right.
different ways that we can approach these subjects, but
Um, I'm thinking for the time that we have, what's going to deliver the most value. Part of the, where's the deep end, right? If we've been in the shallow end of the pool with all that we've covered, what makes sense to go deep on in and around resilience and life
mm,
enrichment. I believe that's energy management. When we
mm,
talk about
mm,
it, the enriched life and being intentional about being present, again, these go hand in hand in terms of being resilient. And happiness concept is where I think I'll wrap up because that
okay,
has everything to do with resilience as well.
okay,
At the heart of it all is around energy consciousness.
mm, love that.
Now, I do whole presentations on just this topic. So,
Yeah.
we're gonna go deep here for a few minutes on it. There are really three modalities that we're speaking to around energy consciousness. There's personal energy, there's interpersonal energy, and there's universal energy. So, as an entrepreneur, personal energy, and we talked about the paradigm earlier, time versus energy, for example. Uh, I try to manage my days with being more intentional about the energy that I have than the time that I have. So with
Interesting.
personal energy from a practical
Yeah.
standpoint, when I'm at my best, when I'm most mentally acute, often in the mornings, I will do my hardest work, whatever that is. If I hit a wall in the afternoon, the laundry still has to get done, right? So that's an
Mhm.
easy one. The other, which I think is a huge, huge part of being present, is interpersonal energy because we have to recognize that we affect one another. We're energy beings.
Yeah.
So, whether we bring our bad mood, and we spread it onto somebody else, right? We have a responsibility not to do that, but we also have a responsibility to ourselves to recognize to not let other people affect us with their energy. So it's a two-way exchange there, and that naturally has a lot to do with resilience.
Mhm.
And then universal energy is really more for people who are into the law of attraction, manifestation. It's certainly something that I do subscribe to. I have a chapter in around gratitude, and I think that gratitude
Mhm.
is really your gateway,
Mhm.
which is gratitude's a subset of mindfulness, to the universal energy, and leave it to everybody
Mhm.
to wherever they are in their mindset and belief system around the extent to which they practice those sorts of techniques also have a lot to do with resilience. So
Mhm.
again, those are cliff notes, but
Mhm.
that's really what I would want to touch on there. And then interestingly, happiness evolved from the book as well. It's not in the book at all.
Okay. Okay.
It actually became the framework from the book for the courses. And
Mhm. Okay.
when we look at, I maybe should have started here, but I'll end here. People would ask me, well, what's a
Okay.
Zism? A
Mhm.
Zism is the subtitle. A Zism is an insight to live by. We all have these pearls of wisdom that we often find ourselves sharing with others
Mhm.
to enrich their lives. That's a
Mhm.
Zism. So, for example, my son, who's 23, who's trying to also, make better things happen in life,
Mhm.
often say to him, few good things happen by themselves. Right?
Mhm.
Get off your Xbox, and go intern, you know? So, practical examples. Now, happiness in and into itself is about having a reflex of positivity. It's about recognizing
Mm,
that we really
love
do have
that.
a choice in and around resilience, um, and perception of how we react and cope with the things that often happen to us that we don't have control over. Now, I'm not talking about the big things in life. I'm not talking about having to go through grief or anything like that. I'm speaking more to everyday resilience, things that might end up happening that annoy you. You have a choice. Are
Mhm,
you in traffic and getting road rage, or are you turning the music up on the song you love? Are you at the pharmacy frustrated that your order's not ready, or are you going to use the time to go pick up a few things in the store that you wouldn't have otherwise thought you needed and save yourself time later? I mean,
mhm,
so whatever that is for you, happiness is about developing that positivity reflex. And the
mhm,
only way,
mhm.
Edie, to develop the positivity reflex and increase your happiness, you might guess this, is, is that you have to be present.
Well, that good job, Matt. You brought that full circle. I know I didn't guess that. But that makes a lot of sense. And I think again, there's a reward there, right, for being present. If it can lead to more happiness, I'm not sure that people make that connection, even though ultimately we would hopefully want to make that connection, right, between presence, happiness, resilience.
Well,
It all kind of works together.
I am going to make the distinction, Edie, that it's actually when I'm speaking to happiness versus happierness. Now,
Mm-hmm.
happiness came about because I'm a journalism degree and I really like things to
Mm-hmm.
be precise. And I could not come up with a word that described optimism in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Optimism is about, and if I speak to presence, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have to walk the talk, right? So optimism is more future based. It's more about hopefulness. It's
Mm-hmm.
not
Right.
exactly grounded in the present. So in the same way that earned confidence is different from confidence, where confidence kind of wavers for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and earned confidence is really a constant when in taking that stock. Happiness is a skill, a positivity reflex that is something that you develop that is also constant, as opposed to happiness, which is also very wavering because we all,
I see.
go through the things that we do in life. So, uh,
That makes sense.
eventually, maybe a second book will happen on happiness as these things continue to evolve. But
Absolutely.
that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, I think it's a great concept, and I love the idea of that positive reflex. That's a definite skill that all of us could benefit from and use more. And I also love it when you talk about the inner coach, kind of coaching yourself, to be more present and to do what you can to feel happier, right? Versus I know that again, there's a difference between like we can't always control what ultimate happiness is, but kind of leaning
Well,
toward that positive, that having that positive reflex.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that, winding down here, knowing that we just covered so much ground. I mean, I mean, that's kind of like drinking from two fire hoses at one time. And I get that.
That's
Look, this
funny.
is 4 years of content condensed into 30 minutes. But
Oh my gosh.
what I think is most relevant from from practical standpoint, aside from all the things on the website that are there for tools to develop these skills, is is that to the basis for these skills is so the benefit, the motivation for it is so highly tangible. So
Mm-hmm.
it could
Right.
be just the smallest thing. And I use that example. Like, you're somebody who just gets frustrated in traffic. Well, choose not to. And instead be intentional about the song that you're listening to and enjoy it
Right.
instead. And then reward
Exactly.
yourself, like, you know what? It's so tangible. Like, look what I did
Right.
intentionally instead of what I do as a reflex, positive versus negative. It's really not hard to experience the rewards of what is worth continuing to get better at.
Absolutely. And like anything, these skills, they can become habits if we continue to practice them over time, and then it becomes easier, right? They become ingrained in our neural pathways. So it does become easier over time. And so Matt, again, can you share where everyone can find you? And then I have one quick question
Yeah,
after you do that.
sure.
I was just curious about something on your website.
Okay,
So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
so mattzinman.com, as it sounds. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm out and about. Um, zisms.com has the hyphen in it. That'll take you right to the book giveaway.
Nice.
And have at it. Poke around the site. There's free resources everywhere. So thank you again for that, Edie. What question
Yeah.
can I answer for you?
Well, I had a question. So you had mentioned your nonprofit, and I saw it on your website too. Is it the same one that I'm remembering reading about? Are you a veteran? Did you help establish? Could you share a
So
little bit about that? I was curious about that.
so the status of the nonprofit, I'm in my third career here, right? So my first career
Yeah.
was in marketing communication, and then I started my own company in 2002. In 2005, I started a nonprofit called the Internship Institute, which isn't
Mhm.
just about setting up programs for college students. It was also for disadvantaged
Mhm.
youth, often ran on grants,
Okay.
people, recidivism, people coming out of prison and getting
Okay.
them landing on their feet, military in transition. I'm
Okay.
a I'm a spouse. My wife was Army.
Mhm.
She was counterintelligence, as a matter of fact. So I agree with her a lot, and I'm not really sure
Mhm.
why is the running joke with that. But I did do some veteran grants. Now, when the
Mhm.
pandemic hit, the grants got pulled. The pandemic
Okay.
really put a final blow into the nonprofit. So it's really in
Okay.
stasis right
Okay.
now. Like, I'm not like
Mhm.
seeking donations. I'm not seeking grants.
Mhm.
The work that we're really talking about here today together is my current focus.
Got it.
I
Got it.
I do
Okay.
have in mind to circle back for it for
Yeah. Okay.
unfinished business
Yeah.
when the time is right.
Well, and things are always in flux, and thank you so much for doing that when you did it. And so, Matt, do you have any final takeaways for anyone who's listening today? Anything that pops into your mind, or maybe you shared it all, but usually
No, I
they're
mean, I think, you highlight this is like Zisms in the book, right? You highlight everything, you highlight nothing. So the answer to your question is twofold. I'd say one, be nothing less than kind to yourself. I think that is going back to the core skills is part one. Part two is take stock around your earned confidence, establish it, right? Recognize what it is you've already
mm,
overcome,
mm,
agree
mhm,
to the definitive that you can't argue the fact that you've overcome everything, and so knowing that you can take anything on. Those
mhm,
are the two things that are really going to help ground people in the present, to give them the foundation to work at it. And that includes amplified awareness and things about the inner critic we really couldn't get into, but the PowerPoint on the website, that hour plus long uh expansion of the concepts that we're talking about here, is there for the consuming, if anybody wants to go deeper. But those are the and happiness, have that
yeah,
positivity reflex,
yeah,
and take stock. And when you recognize that you are reacting to things, you're making those choices to be more positive proactively, living in the silver linings of life, and enjoying it more. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, life's tough, so it takes work and these skills to take back the best parts of it.
yeah. And I so appreciate your work in this, Matt, and helping people to be more present and resilient and happier. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing to help people personally and professionally. And thank you so much for being here today. And I'll see you on LinkedIn.
I will.
And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you, Edie.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Matt. Bye
Got it.
bye.